welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So it seems like the theme of the year, the past couple of years, maybe that, is a collective distrust for the big organizations that we thought were looking out for us, whether it's big pharma or big government or big tech. And the emerging one really, though, is the big banking system. And so joining me today is Dr. Kirk Elliott, and he's got a video that we're going to go over that reveals some pretty interesting, if you want to call it that, upsetting, devious, sinister, it's just overall probably not very good information about what the banks are doing and how they're lying to us about the money that we actually have. So before we get into that, though, make sure you're following me on social media. You can find me in most places at Man in America, and I'm on Twitter as at Man in America US. Also, every show is done as a podcast as well. So if you'd rather listen, just go to your favorite podcast app and search for Man in America, and you'll find me there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Dr. Kirk Elliott. Kirk, as usual, it is so great to have you back on.
So great to see you too, Seth. I wish we had good economic news to talk about, but we don't, because the world is getting wackier.
Yeah. I mean, well, at least everything's all perfect and beautiful in Ohio right now.
Yeah, you've got gray skies, which you kind of normally have, but they're just a different kind of gray right now. Yeah. Good grief. But economically, there's things falling apart, geopolitical conflict, you've got chemical spills, you've got all kinds of weird stuff. But there is hope, right? So keep watching till the end of the show. Absolutely. Because there always is hope.
There really
right?
is.
But yeah, some of the stuff we're talking about is going to be wild and wacky and will blow your minds a little bit.
It does. So let's just go ahead and jump. I'm going to start by playing a 2-minute video that you sent me and said, look, Seth, we have to talk about this. And so I'm not going to introduce any further. I'm just going to go start playing. It's about 2-minute video.
What about lending? Surely they're lending money. No, they don't. Banks don't lend money. Banks, again, at law, it's very clear, they're in the business of purchasing securities. That's it. So you say, okay, don't confuse me with all that legalese. No. I want a loan. I want a loan. Yeah. Fine. Here's the loan contract. Here's the offer letter, and you sign. At law, it's very clear. You have issued a security, namely a promissory note, and the bank is going to purchase that. That's what's happening at law.
Put it in layman's terms. What does that mean?
It means that what the bank is doing is very different from what it presents to the public that it's doing. How does this fit together? So you say, fine, the bank purchases my promissory note, but how do I get my money? I want, it's a loan.
I want 200 grand, right?
I don't care about the details, I want the money. The bank will say, well, you'll find it in your account with us. That would be technically correct. If they say, we'll transfer it to your account, that's wrong, because no money is transferred at all.
It's already
from
in the bank.
Anywhere inside the bank or outside the bank. Why? Because what we call a deposit is simply the bank's record of its debt to the public. Now, it also owes you money, and its record of the money it owes you is what you think you're getting as money, and that's all it is. And that is how the banks create the money supply. The money supply consists to 97% of bank deposits, and these are created out of nothing.
So that's pretty mind-blowing, and I've got a bunch of questions surrounding that, but why don't you first start and kind of put that, even though it was already in somewhat layman terms, like I need layman terms. So can you help with that?
Okay. Let me break it down for everybody then. Okay. So banks should be, normally it's what people think is the safest place in the world for them to park their money, right? And you see all these pictures in movies, banks with the big marble columns and marble staircases up to it. And inside there's a vault and there's like money flowing out of it, right? There's a ton of cash. Safe place to store your money. Well, what do you think banks do with that money, right? So what this video on Russia Times was talking about was how the contractual status of a bank actually is. So banks are not in the business of lending money. Banks are in the business of using your money to invest in securities. So and nobody reads the contracts when they open up a checking or savings account, right? It's usually like this folder that you get and there's like 20 pages of junk in there and nobody ever reads it because it's just a checking account, right? They're not investing anything. It's not like a security. Oh, but it is. It is a security, right? Because what you are issuing to the bank is a promissory note. So let's say you have $20,000 and you put it in your checking and savings account. What you are doing is issuing a security, a $20,000 promissory note to the bank for them to ultimately pay you back at some point. Well, what are they going to do with it? Well, they're going to invest it in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, other companies, whatever, right? But then they use portion of that money to lend out to other people, right? So they don't use all of it. So because it's a bank account, it's a checking account. So ultimately you're going to write checks off of it and pull money out of savings. So historically, there's what's called a reserve requirement. The reserve requirement is how much money of the promissory note that you gave them, your checking or savings account, do they have to hold back to use? Well, historically, that number's been around 10%. So for every $100 you basically deposit into your checking or savings account, they will lend out 90 of it or use 90 of it for an investment or something like that, and they have $10 back. Well, during COVID, all of this changed. They put the Federal Reserve, the bank of all banks, right? That they said, hey, we're going to change the reserve requirement to zero. So all of you federally insured banks, all you federal banks out there, reserve requirement is zero, which means they don't have to hold anything back at all, right? So when you deposit your money, they're just hoping and praying that not everybody comes and wants their money out at the same time, which is why it's precariously close to a run on the banks, right? So let's play this out a little bit further, because a few weeks ago, we talked about the FDIC being completely underinsured, having only 1.38% of all deposits insured. Okay, and it's not the $250,000 that you think you have per account. They only have enough money to cover 1.38% of all deposits. This is why they were getting all hot and bothered about, oh my word, we can't let the public know about this, because if there's a run on the banks, then FDIC doesn't have enough money to insure a bank failure. Well, wait a second. There's not enough money in the banks because the reserve requirement is zero. Technically, banks don't have to hold anything back. And what are they doing with the money that we gave them, that we deposited, that we think is the last safe haven, just cash, right? Well, they're investing it in the same things that you and I would: the stock market, the bond market, real estate. What are all those things doing? They're falling apart. So a bank's portfolio is sinking just like ours is, but it's actually got one more thing that's incredibly worse. So I just read a report yesterday, Seth, that talked about consumer debt in America. So the bottom 90% of America, which is pretty much everybody, it's just not the top 10%, right? Which are the billionaires and the multimillionaires and everybody else. So the bottom 90% of America, which is basically everybody, now has $4.3 trillion of consumer debt. This isn't your housing or anything like that. This is just consumer debt.
Credit cards.
This is the highest it's ever been. Car loans, credit cards, things like that. Well, who issues car loans? Who issues credit cards? Banks do. So not only are they investing your money, they're actually using it, issuing credit lines to people. And when wages are coming down, don't believe the State of the Union address. Do not believe that, because it's pure garbage, right? When Biden said, oh, wages are going up and inflation is coming down, it's like, okay, fact check that one. It's not true. It's actually the opposite. Wages are down 0.9%. Inflation keeps persisting. In fact, here's the problem with inflation. They think that they're raising rates is slowing inflation down, and they were cheering about it, and they're celebrating how CPI has come down over the last half a year or so. Well, it's not. Core inflation, food and energy kept going up, but now the CPI numbers that just came out last Tuesday, what did it say? It said inflation actually went up 0.5% over the last 30 days. But wait a second. I thought raising interest rates was going to slow this down, because this is what they've been saying. It's like, we had 3/4 rate hikes every month, and then we went down to a half, and then we went down to a quarter because we're beating this war on inflation. It's like, it's not. Inflation's going up, but they're still raising rates. This is my prediction, and I don't like making predictions, but because of this, the next rate hike is probably going to be 0.5 point. It's not going to be 1/4 point again, because what they just proved is it's not working. Them raising rates is not actually slowing down inflation. And here's the reason why. We can connect some dots here, right? So people have heard you and I talk about inflation is simply an increase in the money supply. The more you print money, the more it devalues it, and it takes more of that junk currency to buy goods and services. So when we enter this inflate or die scenario, because the petrodollar is going away, and we don't have any capital inflow coming in, right, as a country, so the Fed just is forced to print more money because we still have entitlements. We still have Social Security. We still have Medicare. We still have to raise the debt ceiling. We still have all this junk that we have to pay for, but we're not getting it from foreign capital inflow. So therefore, let's print it. So when that happens, you devalue your currency. And when that happens, inflation comes because it takes more of that junk currency to buy goods and services. But there's been a problem. So over the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks now, since January 1st, if you look at usdebtclock.org, the gold and silver went to zero, right? Because the money supply is shrinking. M2 money supply is shrinking. M2 is checking, savings, CDs, money markets, your liquid assets that people can have immediate access to pretty much. Well, they've pulled $500 billion, $500 billion out of M2 money supply, since, probably over the last 3-4 months. It's a lot, right? But if that were to happen, and Kirk, you're telling us a lie, because you said inflation was an increase in the money supply, and you just said that the money supply was decreasing. Why do we still have inflation? It's like there's two different money supplies. You've got the one that comes to the public, which is M2. That's what is in our checking savings accounts. That's the one that's decreasing. But there's another money supply, which is all the money that's being printed in circulation. That's called MZM. They stopped reporting that in 2021 because they don't want people to know how much money they're actually printing to fund every stimulus program under the sun. So that's why we have inflation. But in theory, if you were to put money into circulation, it's like that movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, right? So if you print money, people will spend it. But, it's not making it into the hands of the people. In fact, money supply is decreasing. Here's the problem. My M2 money supply is money in checking, savings, CDs, money market accounts, things that banks have, right? So if banks don't have enough money anymore, the M2 money supply is shrinking. They've got toxic assets just like we do. Well, now what? Now what's going to happen with banks? This is why that FDIC video that we watched a few weeks ago is so incredibly important, because we have never had a time in the history of America where we've had such a ripe time for a run on the banks. And it's a scary situation for most people, because it's like, I can't put money in the stock market. I can't put money in the bond market. My real estate's collapsing. And Kirk, now you're telling me that my money in the bank isn't safe either? It's like, yeah, sadly, that's what I'm telling you. Because banks aren't in the business of lending money. They're in the business of collecting money from you, investing it. That's how they make money. This is fractional reserve banking. And what you see on your statement, on your checking and savings account statement every month, is a ledger entry that says, hey, Seth, Whole House, this is what you should kind of have. This is what we say that you have in the bank, and hopefully it's there when you need it. That's all that a statement tells us, is hopefully it's there when you need it. This is a reflection of what you put in.
And it's mind-blowing to wrap my head around this, because if my perception of banking as of a couple of years ago is that, the banks, they make their money because they're lending money out, and they're charging, say you get a car loan from the bank and your credit's not so great, so you're paying 12%, right? So I looked at it and thinking, okay, well, so banks probably make a decent amount of money, but maybe they're averaging and they're making 10% on average on all the loans they're putting out there. And, because it's like, if I was a bank, that's probably how I'd think about my business, right? It's like, okay, well, you take the money in, you loan it out, and it's a very traditional way of banking. But it's just, what's crazy though, is especially when you mentioned that there's no longer this reserve requirement, right? They're no longer being required to keep any of that money. That it's almost like the bank is your crazy cousin that's always investing in new schemes. And he's like, okay, give me $100,000. I'll give you a receipt for it that says $100,000 is still here. But actually, he's just going out and he's investing it all over the place. And also, like, look at what happened with the housing collapse, even investing in, financial vehicles that are probably not that sound. And so it's just crazy to think like that the banks, like, they no longer have to keep our money, and we give them all of our money, and they take it and they just go and gamble with it. And they say, oh, well, you're FDIC insured. But then when the music stops, of course, they're not going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to take the money out of our own coffers, and we're going to take the money out of our own executives, salaries to make sure we pay back the people. They're going to say, oh, sorry, right? Time for a bailout. But then what's also crazy to think about this, and this is the other point that was made in that video, and I've thought about this too. It's like, we bought a house, in the last year and a half, and we have a couple $100,000 mortgage that we have on this house. And, when we went and we applied for that, went through the process of getting that mortgage, and then you get that, it's like, where'd that money come from, right? So the bank is kind of like, oh, you've now got this money in the, a mortgage account, right, which is being, paid to your, whatever the process that goes to, obviously. But it's just like, that money, it's like, where's that money even come from? It's not like the bank is pulling, say $200,000 out of the money supply in cash and then handing it to somebody else. It's like they're maybe just taking that number and zeroing it out over there, and then this other bank is adding that money to their numbers. But it just seems like it's all one giant lie. It's like the banks are absolutely lying to us. And the problem is that what happens when everyone knows the truth? And it's like, if more people know the truth, more people are going to say, I'm not going to keep my money in the bank. And when that hits critical mass, it collapses the entire banking system. So it's like,
it doesn't just collapse the entire banking system, it collapses the entire system, right? Because banks lend money to brokerage houses, banks lend money to companies, right? When they need inventory, they need short-term loans, they need a house, they need a car. I mean, it's not just the banking system that implodes, it's the entire system that implodes. And this is where it's like a Ponzi scheme playing itself out. Because what's a Ponzi scheme? That's when the last people that put money into it are paying for all the people that went in first, and they're getting these excessive returns, right? Well, this is kind of like a bank, because it's fractional reserve banking, which means you put money in and they're lending it out to do whatever they want. And they're hoping people keep putting money into it so they can keep paying out, that there's enough money to cover people getting their withdrawals and paying checks and everything like that. But at some point, it collapses under the weight of itself, under the weight of debt. And we might just be the generation, in fact, I'm sure that we are, that sees this massive collapse of the entire system, bringing with it a new alternative, right? And this is why World Economic Forum, people are talking about global, financial reset, or the Great Reset. We've got central bank digital currencies. They're going to come in like a knight on a shiny white horse to save the day and say, we've got a solution to fix the problem that, oh, by the way, we're the ones that created the problem. We're just not going to tell you that, right? I mean, but this is the reality of the world that we're living in. They're going to come in with a solution to fix something that they broke. And I think that they broke it on purpose to bring in a new system that the new system is just like the current banking system that we have, fiat-based money creation. They can print money whenever they want, but it's digital. You know how when you create money, you have to have the paper, the cotton paper, whatever it is. You put it in the printing press, they put ink on it, it goes through, they cut it, they put it in stacks, they send it to the banks. There's a process to it, right? So imagine the process of creating $1 trillion. That's a lot, right? If you're doing it in hundreds or 20s or whatever else. Well, what's the process of creating $1 trillion in a central bank digital currency? You got some nerd sitting at his computer and say, okay, I just added 8 zeros to the money supply, hit enter, it's done. It is so easy to create inflation in a digital world because it's just a keystroke. That's it. See, but here's the bigger problem with all of it. Like you and I have talked about incessantly for the past couple of months, that is, it's all about people control. It's communist, fascist, command and control of your bank accounts. And if you want to control a people, you control what they spend money on. Then you control that person. That's what this is all about.
And
this is why the march to open AI infrastructure, to robots ruling everything and being the algorithm that determines our digital social profile is so scary, because that's just some person programming what's good and what's bad on our digital social profile and giving the ability for computers to think and learn when computers don't have a soul. Computers don't have intuition. Computers don't have that gut feeling that so many of us have when we make decisions. It's black or it's white. Oh, my creator said we can't do it this way. You know, the programmer, and that's what the computer's thinking, if it's a thinking computer. And so they can't, I mean, this just becomes mind numbing. And so you've got banks that are moving us like this juggernaut, just coming down the highway right at us. And it's like central banks are going to be here. They are going to be here. And you're going to have people group after people group after people group that say, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Because evangelicals and Catholics are going to think this is the mark of the beast. Libertarians are going to say this is spyware on my bank account. This is a complete loss of freedom and privacy, the biggest ever. I'm not playing this game either. I mean, everybody is not going to like what comes next.
Well, and what's crazy to look at this is that, you know, because over the past couple of years, I've become much more interested in finance and the global money systems. And I really think it's the elephant in the room that, you know, you're not seeing hardly anybody talk about this. But if you look, and it all makes sense now, you look at Klaus Schwab coming out in the World Economic Forum saying, you will own nothing and be happy. Well, it's like, well, what does that mean? Okay, what does it really mean? Because if you look at the money supply system, I believe with this is that it's actually, they want to do away with currency, period. Because currency still gives you individual freedom. Even if it's monitored as a central bank digital currency, you still can say, well, I did really well and I've got $100,000 in my digital wallet, which I can go buy a boat, I can do this. I think that, because then you're still owning something, right? So what I see with this is that they're marching us towards this future where everyone basically gets a universal basic income in the form of credits. And so it's not even like you have money, it's like how many digital credits do you get? And so you use your digital credits to exchange for the food the government gives you. I mean, it's really like some sort of thing out of Terminator and Blade Runner and the Hunger Games all merged together. It's like that's where they want to take us. And you know, Klaus Schwab just recently said, I think it was the World Government Summit. Basically, what he said was that in the future, and I should have probably prepared that video for us, but basically, in the future, actually, I'm gonna go and load this. I'll trim this out because this is a really, really important video. Have you seen this video going around?
I'm not sure which video.
Let me play this because this is
it the bunch of snippets that talk about what central bank digital currency, like 8 different people talking about it?
No, it's
okay.
Let's see. Okay, no, here it is right here. This is going to blow your mind. Okay. And so let's see. They make this.
Our life.
Okay, here we go. So I'll go ahead and play this video right here and just look at, okay, it's only 18 seconds. Listen to what Klaus Schwab says. I'll say it, I'll play it a few times because this is everything right here. This is everything we're talking about.
Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
So who masters the technology? Our lives will be very different, but who masters the technology will be the masters of the world. And this is it. Like that's like they're not hiding it. They're being so overt with this agenda and saying that, you know, even our currency will become a technology, and who masters that technology masters the world. And they see themselves as the masters of the future world.
I mean, that's what it's all about from the beginning. This isn't about fixing a financial system. It's not about fixing something that's broken. Granted, it is broken. It's all about changing everything for people control and for ultimate power. That's what it's always been about. And how do you best get power? When you can control people's money, because you can't function in a world without money. When you can't buy food, when you can't pay your rent, when you can't pay to go to the doctor, when you can't pay for medicine, when you can't pay for shelter, when you can't, I mean, you control people's spending, you control everything. But imagine this, take it one step further. What's the religion of the world government? It's a godless religion, right? So if they don't like who you donate to for a church, who you tithe to, I'm going to cut you off from that. So imagine a world where this is the new paradigm and they cut out any kind of faith-based institutions from receiving money. How are those places going to survive? We're marching headlong into a godless society by design, their design, right? But this is where we have to start thinking outside the box and create ways to not just survive, but thrive, take care of those around us, and prepare for really, I would say, not what's coming, prepare for what's here. Because these aren't future concepts anymore. They're here. Even the Bank of England said, yeah, we're going to have central bank digital currency by 2025. The Federal Reserve said we're going to start. They actually implemented the quant token, you know, the Federal Reserve token, on November 18th. It's here. It just hasn't been fully implemented. And that's the scary thought to most people, that causes people to put their head in the sand like an ostrich in a windstorm and just hope that things go away and they put their head back up and everything's good.
It's not that time in history anymore.
That's not a way to live. That's not a way to live.
But the good thing with this,
and this also cause you to make a wrong decision. Yeah. That's the two things that fear does. Causes you to ignore it or make the wrong decision. But when you operate out of faith, confidence, expectation, live a life of abundance rather than poverty, right? All these things that are good things, and you can overcome all of that. And that's really what all of us truly need to do, and get into that mindset and not let these news bites and the things that we're talking about on this show put your head in the sand and say, Kirk and Seth, they're so scary. I mean, I just don't know what to do after I watch a show. It's like, that's not what it's all about. We're not sensationalizing the news. The news is sensational enough already. We're telling you this so you can prepare and overcome and thrive, because there are solutions.
Well, and it's interesting because you think, well, how do we win at their game? Well, you just don't play it, right? That's how you win. You just don't play their game. Yeah. And that's what's been really empowering to me, because, you know, like my job is really understanding the evil that's in our world and trying to help people make sense of it, trying to make, kind of warn people about it, trying to make it less mystical and say, okay, here's the core facts and give solutions. And so I'm hyper aware of just where they want it to be headed. Right. But, and that's been frightening at times. It's been frightening to think like, oh, how am I going to escape this? Right. But what I've really come to, which has given me a lot of peace actually, is that I'm just going to become more and more resilient and more self-reliant and build a community. Like right now, we're doing some amazing things on our property where we met with some beautiful patriots yesterday, and they're consulting us. And so we're going to build this beautiful kind of permaculture center on some of our property to kind of create this regenerative growing and this, orchards and, places where we have, animals and all integrated. And it's like, well, we can build these systems that when they say, oh, we're cutting off your food for these reasons, or when they're saying, hey, we're going to burn down all these chicken plants so that eggs are now $10 a dozen or $20 a dozen, or better yet, like you can only buy 2 eggs per week because of their carbon, you use your carbon credits. I'm saying, you know what? Like I've got a whole yard of grass. I can free range these birds and I'm going to have my own chickens, and we've got eggs. We have more eggs than we know what to do with. Right. So it's really like, it's empowering to say, I'm just not going to participate in their system.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, there's articles now about UK moving to CBDC by 2025, right? You read into those articles, what does it say? It says that there is a limit to the credit and debit system that they're going to have, meaning they want to limit it to 20,000 pounds. They didn't mention a time frame, but let's just say it's 20,000 pounds a month or 20,000 pounds a year, which is like $25,000, right? So what if you have $1 million in your account? Well, they're limiting you to 25,000. This is where your digital social profile, all the assets that you have, everything that they see that you've been spending money on, they're going to say, okay, Seth, you get $4,200 a month max. And once you hit that, they turn the off button, say no more, right? I've seen stories of kind of strategic plans that they have for this. A lot of this is not just about people control, it's about environment, right? So carbon emissions and everything like that, and Agenda 2030 and the things that were conspiracy theory 10 years ago. It's like, well, nuts, it's here, right? This never was conspiracy. This was their theory. This was their plan, right? So, if you live in the southeast part of America, let's just say, well, you can't take a plane outside of your quadrant. You can't travel outside of your geographic area because you're going to be a net detractor from environmental cleanup, from clean air, right? So this is all about people control. And so the way that you actually get out of that system is not be a digital entity in their digital world, right? Because that's what they want. That's how they control you. So what are things that are not digital entities? You already addressed some of them: having property, having chickens, being self-sustaining, right? It's huge. It's massive. Because if you can produce your own food, you're not going to have to buy it in their digital world, right? So owning things like gold and silver, tangible assets that you can use as barter. That's not a stock. It's not a certificate. It's not a share. It's not anything other than what it is, a real tangible thing. Phenomenal way to invest. So what I love about your approach, Seth, is we're talking about ways to protect your 401ks, your IRAs, your brokerage accounts, but also ways to protect your life and your way of living and the ability for your family to eat and not just survive, but thrive. Because here's the thing. If you're the only one in your neighborhood that has chickens or goats or cows, right? Who's going to be coming to you? Pretty much everybody who doesn't. To say, hey, can you help me? And this is where community becomes so important in the days ahead.
Oh,
and I'm not talking about us living on a commune, right? I'm talking about people of like mind working together to create a synergy that's greater than the individual parts. That's what I'm talking about.
And what's incredible about that, because I also, sometimes I see people say, well, why buy gold and silver? You can't eat it, right? And it's like, well, true. I don't try eating your silver. It's not going to turn out very well. But what I'm thinking is that there's this parallel economy. There's this group of people that are really coming together. And I'm seeing it grow so rapidly. I know that you are too, because I talked to you about this off the record sometimes. And you're like, yeah, like people are buying gold and silver like we've never seen before. And so so for instance, if I've got my chickens and I'm producing an extra 30 eggs every day, and I have my neighbor that comes to me, and if he says, hey Seth, how about I give you an ounce of silver every week, and you give me 6 eggs every day, right? Like this, I would take that. I would prefer that. And I'll even say, look, you give me silver and it'll be half the price as if you give me cash, because I don't want to support their system. Right? Especially as they move into a digital system. And so people are saying, well, what are you going to do with it? Like, how do you barter with gold and silver? It's like, well, it will emerge. Like one of my buddies who's a super prepper that's building a compound in Southern Ohio, he's paying off his contractors with silver, right? So he has contractors that are coming and they're doing, say, electrical work, and he's set it up with them that he says, okay, look, I'll give you 30 ounces of silver if you're going to install this generator or whatever it is. So these economies are emerging. And like I feel blessed because I want to pioneer this. Like I want to go back to that way of living. I want it to be that I go to the local farm or farm market or the local swap meet, and I'm saying, okay, how about I'll give you an ounce of silver for that ammunition you have there. And it's like, and the government doesn't touch it. They don't even know that I purchased that. They're not tracking it. Right? Because we look at the corruption of the IRS and everything. It's like, I want to go to a world where it's like, how do we win at their game? We don't play their game.
100%. It's how you win it. It's how you win the game. You don't play it. You don't even sit down at the table, pull out the game board and play.
Exactly.
Because they're not going to play fair. Right?
No, they're not.
So you don't ever want to play with somebody that's going to cheat because you'll lose, right? So, but ultimately in the end, you don't play, you're going to win.
Exactly. And so folks, if you are interested in gold and silver, Kirk Elliott is the guy. He's who I use. He's who I have like full confidence in recommending. Just go to goldwithseth.com. It takes you here. Scroll down. There's a form you can fill out right there. Someone on Kirk's team will get a hold of you. They'll walk you through. It's a free consultation. Even if you're just curious about it, just go ahead and try it. Just do it. Or you can just give them a call, 720-605-3900. That information is also going to be in the description below. But, look, folks, Kirk, also just when you work with Kirk Elliott, that Kirk is who supports me. Kirk is what allows me to do what I do. And so that's one of the best ways to support what we're doing here on Man in America is by working with the partners that we have. And I'm so selective with who I work with because I feel like it's my reputation I'm putting on the line. And Kirk is a dear friend. He's a strong Christian, a patriot, and he really knows his stuff. So I highly encourage, again, it's goldwithseth.com. So Kirk, any final kind of words in closing for us?
Yeah, I don't want people to hear the message today and be stricken with fear. It was heavy. I mean, it really was a lot of, central bank digital currency, the ability to not buy or sell. I mean, that's heavy. But here's the thing. When you see that, which is why we bring it up because there's solutions and there's things to do. So don't let fear grip you so much and paralyze you that you don't do anything. Do something. Take that leap of faith. Give us a call. We'll strategically map out a way for you to get out of the path of this hurricane and thrive. It's what we're here for. So I encourage everybody, give us a call. Don't be gripped with fear. Don't let it consume you. Don't let it paralyze you. Don't let it make you make the wrong decision. But give us a call and we'll help walk through it together. It's what we do.
Well, Kirk, thank you so much. It's always great having you on. I always appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to next time.
You too, Seth. Bye for now.